What's up guys, back with another video, and today I figured it could be fun to talk about the application of passive weapon effects in Borderlands 2. It's interesting because what could possibly be considered to be a glitch or exploit in some cases has become a facet of high-level play in other cases. Now, before we start, it's important to mention that I'm not trying to bash anybody here, but I do think this is something that does need to be discussed. So, just so you know, if you think I'm speaking poorly about your favorite character or strategy that you just happen to like to use, know that I do so mostly to draw a correlation between what is considered a glitch by some and high-level play by others. So, I guess without further ado, let's go ahead and start. Now, for those of you that are unfamiliar with passive weapon effects, they are similar but different from the special weapon effects that occur on most unique, legendary, pearlescent, and seraph weapons. An example of special weapon effects would be something like the Infinity's ability to have truly infinite ammo, or the Sandhawk's ability to fire bird-shaped projectiles. Special weapon effects can appear on all unique, legendary, seraph, and pearlescent weapons, and these effects are ultimately what makes these weapons unique when compared to all of the other non-unique weapons in this game. A passive weapon effect is an effect or attribute of a weapon with a special weapon effect that can be transferred from one weapon to another. And an example of this would be something like how Moxxi weapons provide the player with the ability to heal from most damage sources even after you switch weapons. Or how when you're dual wielding as Salvador, you can dual wield a Moxxi weapon in one hand and a non-Moxxi weapon in the other hand, and the damage dealt from both weapons will heal the player. Normally, non-Moxxi weapons shouldn't be able to heal the player, but they do through passive weapon effects. And usually, passive weapon effects are fairly temporary and require the player to swap between weapons to get the most out of them. And this means you would have to have a weapon with a slow projectile speed in order to take advantage of passive weapon effects on most characters. However, it is worth noting that since Salvador can dual wield two different weapons at the same time, he tends to be the character who is able to take advantage of passive weapon effects the best, as he can make use of weapons with both slow and fast projectile speeds. While there are many unique weapons that have passive weapon effects, there tend to be a few more famous examples. As we just mentioned earlier, Moxxi weapons tend to be popular, and a wide variety of Moxxi weapons like the Slow Hand, Hail, Heartbreaker, Ruby, and Grog Nozzle can heal from various damage sources. Slow projectile weapons like rocket launchers can be fired at targets, and before the projectiles hit, the player can switch to a Moxxi weapon to heal off of all of the damage that's inevitably dealt. And there's a good chance that many of you that have played through Borderlands 2 have made use of this effect that Moxxi weapons provide, and for certain builds or class setups, making use of Moxxi weapons for passive healing is essential. There's also the Lady Fist, which functions very similarly to Moxxi weapons like the Grog Nozzle or Ruby. However, instead of healing the player, it boosts the critical hit bonus of a particular weapon. So normally you might have a weapon that deals 200 damage or so, but if you quickly swap to a Lady Fist before the projectiles hit on target, you may end up dealing 1,000 damage instead. The point is, like how Moxxi weapons heal, the Lady Fist can be used to massively boost the critical hit damage of most weapons. Most characters can use this provided that they are far enough away from certain enemies or with weapons that have slow projectile speed. And a great example would be how someone could use the Twister shotgun and then swap to the Lady Fist for boosted crit damage. Alternatively, Salvador can dual wield almost any weapon that's capable of performing a critical hit with the Lady Fist for enhanced critical hit damage. And as you can imagine, this would make already amazing weapons like the Interfacer that much more powerful. Now, there are other weapon swap and dual wield combos that arguably make use of the same passive weapon effects principle, and yet are considered by parts of the community to be glitches or exploits. A great example would be the Flakker Ahab or Flakker Nukem glitch, in which the player fires the Flakker and then quickly swaps to a Torg rocket launcher to get significantly enhanced damage. Like how you can swap to a Moxxi weapon to heal your character, or how you can swap to the Lady Fist to boost your critical hit damage, you can swap to a Torg rocket launcher with the Flakker equipped to deal additional damage. And you can also dual wield an Ahab and a Flakker for enhanced Flakker damage, and at that point, you don't have to worry about swapping weapons at all. There's also another common trick where you can dual wield the Pimpernel and the Ahab to get a similar result. The Ahab or any other Torg rocket launcher will boost the damage that the Pimpernel can deal significantly. This combo can be quite powerful, and is arguably more powerful than the Flakker Ahab combo, but since only Salvador can dual wield, this trick can't really be performed very well by the other characters. Ultimately, the Flakker Ahab and Pimperhab combos work much like passive healing with the Grog Nozzle or passive crit boosting that you can do with the Lady Fist. You're either dual wielding as Salvador to get passive weapon effects from one weapon to transfer to another, or you fire a weapon and swap to another to benefit from the effects of both. So I suppose the question is, why is one of these considered to be a glitch while the other is not? I suspect much of the stigma for the Pimperhab and Flakker Ahab combo is because many people fear it will be abused during online multiplayer play. That, and it's pretty easy to simply fire the Flakker and then swap to a Torg rocket launcher for that enhanced damage. On the one hand, I sort of understand where these people are coming from, since you don't want to always play with people that are spamming those combos. And on some level, it's kind of like how sham fleeting has gotten sort of a negative stigma, since it doesn't really require any immense skill to pull off that technique. While I would encourage these people to play as host and kick people that do things that they don't like, I can't understand why they would be upset, and perhaps as a guest, you may want to talk it out with the host and see if they care whether you use these combos or not. I'll admit that back in the day, I kinda got a little turned off by the Evil Smasher glitch, which allowed the player to deal crazy amounts of damage with pretty much any weapon. I remember instances where that did get abused, and while I didn't like the fact that Gearbox removed it at the time, I do sort of understand why they did that now. After all, why use any other weapon in the game when you can just get an Infinity and an Evil Smasher and walk through the endgame? But to play devil's advocate, I do think that I have to make this point. Let's say I'm an Axton or Zero player, and I'm offended by the fact that Salvador can more easily take advantage of passive weapon effects because he can dual wield. After all, Salvador can crit boost virtually any weapon, while the other characters have far more difficulty in doing so because they have to swap weapons, where Salvador just dual wields them. An argument could be made that the ability to dual wield weapons gives Salvador an unfair advantage in multiplayer matches. And let's just be real for a second. Does it take any skill to use the Grog Nozzle and Unkempt Herald combo? And yeah, maybe it takes a little more skill and timing to take advantage of the Lady Fist and Interfacer combo, but you're still taking advantage of passive weapon effects, much like you would be if you were using the Flakker Ahab or the Pimperhab combos. The only difference is that you're using an inferior method when you're using the Lady Fist. While I can't necessarily confirm that this is why Gearbox or 2K Australia did this, I suspect one of the main reasons Nisha can only dual wield two of the same weapon in Borderlands the pre-sequel is because if Nisha could dual wield two different weapons of any type, she would basically have the same advantages that Salvador has in Borderlands 2. Interestingly, the Flakker Ahab combo still works in the pre-sequel, but instead of using the Ahab, you have to use the Nukem, as that is ultimately the strongest Torg rocket launcher in the pre-sequel. And I suspect this wasn't removed for much of the same reason that the Hail and other Moxxi weapons in the pre-sequel didn't have their passive healing abilities removed. I think another reason some are hesitant to admit that using the Flakker Ahab combo is similar to crit boosting with the Lady Fist is because they may feel that they would have to acknowledge that they are cheating, glitching, or exploiting the game in some way. And perhaps a counter-argument to this is that Borderlands 2's overpowered level difficulties basically require the Grog Nozzle or some other Moxxi weapon on some characters. Imagine if you didn't have the Grog Nozzle or another Moxxi weapon to dual wield, or if you didn't have the Grog Nozzle or Ruby to act as your melee weapon for Zero. How are you supposed to play quote-unquote legitimately if you can't make use of at least some passive weapon effects? In my opinion, both of these arguments are correct. On the one hand, by using passive weapon effects, you are technically exploiting the game like you would be if you were using the Flakker Ahab or Pimperhab combos. But at the same time, I think it's fair to argue that the game doesn't really give you a choice in some cases. After all, I will admit that I wouldn't want to play Salvador if I couldn't take advantage of passive weapon effects. I would also say if passive weapon effects are there for the player to use, why not use them? As far as I see it, if you were to actually nerf, ban or patch Borderlands 2 in a way that was to remove the Flakker Ahab combo, you would also have to patch out passive weapon effects for all weapons. It's all the same thing, whether you'd really like to admit that or not. If you ask me, this entire situation is a double standard. On the one hand, using the grog nozzle for passive healing is not a glitch. However, using the Flakker Ahab combo, which is very similar, is. But with all of this said, I do hope that passive weapon effects return in a more official capacity in the next game. And while I would agree with the people that don't like the Flakker Ahab combo and think it's probably actually a good idea to remove things like that for the next release, having passive weapon effects themselves could prove to provide some interesting strategy elements like it did in Borderlands 2, and I ultimately don't want to see that go away. It's just that I feel if you're going to say one thing is a glitch, and then you're going to say another thing is not a glitch, you've got a double standard there, and that's stupid. But alright guys, I think that's going to wrap up this particular video. This is a little bit of a shorter video today, but again, if you like this video, feel free to leave a like, click the bell to join the notification squad, and as always, take care, and I'll see you all next time.